Welcome viewers to Sagaing Media. Today's our analysis from a team of experts from Sagaing Media examines one of the most consequential and least discussed developments emerging from the India-Myanmar borderlands in November 2025. The events reported by the Tahan Post on November 18 describe an 8-day gathering of key Naga armed factions and Meitei armed actors inside the Naga Self-Administered Zone of Sagaing region, followed by military movement into Manipur and intensified clashes with Nscn-K. The report further alleges cooperation between these groups and Myanmar military units in Tamu district against revolutionary forces. This analysis brings together the available facts, interprets their meaning in a coherent narrative flow, and explores their possible consequences for the Kuki people, Chin resistance, the Kuki National Army, Burma KNAB, and the Kachin Independence Army, KIA. The aim is to create a documentary-style narrative that is engaging, fact-based, and suitable for voiceover or video presentation. The borderlands of Sagaing region and Manipur have long been shaped by layered histories, ethnic aspirations, military pressures, and overlapping claims to territory and governance. Yet even within this complex landscape, the events unfolding in early November 2025 stand out for their unusual combination of secrecy, cross-border participation, and political messaging. According to the reporting, 3 armed blocs, NSCN-IM Central, the NSCN-IM faction led by Absolom/Hanshi, and Naga armed groups from Manipur, began an extended meeting on November 5 inside the Naga Self-Administered Zone. The choice of location was itself strategic. The Naga SAZ lies within the mountains of western Sagaing, an area historically influenced by Naga political leadership, and often used as a staging ground for cross-border discussions that avoid scrutiny from larger state forces. What makes this meeting remarkable is not only who attended, but who did not. The long-standing local armed faction NSCN-K, known for its deep roots in Somra, and the wider Naga SAZ, was pointedly absent. The Tahan Post notes that the participating groups sharply criticized NSCN-K for refusing to attend, a detail that signals internal friction. In a region where Naga political unity has been claimed repeatedly, but rarely achieved in practice, the absence of NSCN-K highlights the fragmented realities on the ground. Any major coordination effort that excludes a key local faction inevitably reshapes power balances and increases uncertainty for the communities living in the affected areas. During the meeting, discussions reportedly extended beyond military or strategic concerns. Engagement with the Township Culture Committee, the Tangkhul Literature and Culture Committee, and ward village administrators reveals a significant political dimension. Armed groups in the borderlands often seek not just battlefield gains, but also the ability to shape civil authority through cultural bodies, education committees, and village councils. By involving these civilian actors, the meeting appears to have pursued legitimacy, influence, and control over local narratives. It suggests that the participants sought endorsement from civil institutions, perhaps to prepare for future political announcements, territorial claims, or coordinated actions. For 8 days, these discussions continued inside the Naga SAZ, after which the participants crossed into Tasun village in Manipur on November 13. The movement itself is not unusual. Armed factions in this region have long crossed the porous India-Myanmar border in both directions. However, in the broader context of escalating conflict inside Manipur, where ethnic tensions between Meitei and Kuki communities have erupted repeatedly, such movement carries significant weight. A coordinated armed presence arriving from a cross-border meeting immediately raises questions about the intended purpose and immediate next steps. At the same time as this meeting concluded, earlier reports from November describe another major development. Over 100 armed fighters affiliated with a Meitei group allegedly entered Somra township, deep inside the Naga Self-Administered Zone, and clashed with NSCN-K forces. The scale, more than 100 men, indicates deliberate planning and significant logistical support. The fighting was reportedly intense, which implies considerable disruption to civilian life, the probable displacement of families, and the growing vulnerability of communities caught between competing forces. These events form a dangerous mosaic. On one side, an extended meeting unites NSCN-IM factions with Manipur-based Naga groups and receives the participation of cultural institutions. On another side, a Meitei armed force conducts an armed incursion into the Naga SAZ, clashing with NSCN-K. Overlaying this is the allegation that NSCN-IM and Meitei armed groups are cooperating with Myanmar military units in Tamu district to target anti-junta revolutionary forces. Each of these pieces alone would cause concern. Together, they suggest a significant shift in the political and military dynamics of the region. This raises an immediate question: what are these armed groups targeting? Based on the factual patterns in the reporting, several clear objectives emerge. The first likely target is territorial influence. By meeting inside the Naga SAZ and engaging local administrative bodies, NSCN-IM and associated groups appear to be positioning themselves as the dominant actors in Naga-inhabited areas of Sagaing and adjacent border regions. Such efforts help control tax collection, village governance, mobility, and the flow of information. Influence over cultural committees is particularly important because it shapes identity and community loyalty, critical factors in borderland conflicts. The second likely target is rival armed groups. NSCN-K's exclusion from the meeting and its subsequent clashes with Meitei fighters suggest that one practical outcome may be an effort to pressure or marginalize NSCN-K from its long-established strongholds. If NSCN-IM and Meitei groups are acting together, as the report claims, then NSCN-K could face coordinated pressure from multiple sides, militarily, politically, and locally. The third and more sensitive target is revolutionary forces opposed to Myanmar's military junta. If the cooperation described in Tamu district is accurate, it signals a deliberate attempt by the Myanmar military to employ local non-state armed actors, including groups from India, as part of a strategy to restrict resistance movement, cut off cross-border retreat routes, and weaken revolutionary groups operating in the Sagaing, Tamu corridor. Such tactics have precedent in the Tatmadaor's long history of dividing ethnic resistance, but cooperation with non-Myanmar actors would represent a significant escalation. Given these dynamics, the consequences for the Kuki people are deeply concerning. Kuki communities living near border corridors or in villages adjacent to Meitei strongholds face immediate uncertainty. Large-scale movement of Meitei fighters through the Naga SAZ, especially in areas where Kuki and Naga territories are close, increases the risk of spillover violence. If NSCN-IM and certain Meitei groups are aligning, Kuki civilians could find themselves caught between hostile formations on either side of the border. Political marginalization also becomes likely in villages where cultural committees now align more closely with groups represented in the meeting. For Kuki communities in northern Sagaing and southern Manipur, any shift in administrative control directly affects land claims, resource access, and security arrangements. The trauma of past clashes between Kuki and Meitei groups makes the presence of armed Meitei units along sensitive border routes a severe trigger for displacement and fear. The Chin resistance forces and the KNAB face their own set of challenges. Border corridors between Tamu, Kampat, and the northern Chin hills are vital for transportation, temporary sanctuary, and logistical movement for multiple resistance formations. If these areas become contested by NSCN-IM, Meitei alliances working with Myanmar troops, Chin resistance groups risk losing operational mobility. The KNAB, which operates in Upper Chin State and Sagaing region, would face increased surveillance and potential interdiction. Any force that can influence both sides of the border, the Indian and Myanmar sides, gains a strategic advantage in containing Kuki-Burma resistance movements. The Kachin Independence Army, although geographically distant from this particular theatre, cannot ignore the implications. The use of non-state armed actors from India to assist Myanmar troops would mark a significant evolution in the junta's approach. For decades, the Tatmadaor handled insurgencies internally and occasionally collaborated with local militias, but a broader cross-border partnership creates a precedent. If similar patterns emerge elsewhere, resistance groups like the KIA could face increasing pressure to counter new alliances that extend beyond Myanmar's borders. The political implications could be significant. If the junta demonstrates it can pull in non-Myanmar actors to restrict resistance corridors, ethnic armed organizations across the country may face reduced access to safe transit routes and humanitarian pathways. Looking ahead, several possible outcomes emerge from these facts and their intersections. One possible outcome is the consolidation of a new power bloc in the Naga SAZ. NSCN-IM factions could use the meeting to assert more coherent political authority over cultural institutions and local governance. The presence of Meitei groups supports this consolidation by providing additional manpower for operations against rivals such as NSCN-K. If these groups succeed in establishing stable territorial influence, they may attempt to formalize cross-border arrangements that further strengthen their position. A second possible outcome is prolonged conflict within the Naga SAZ and adjacent areas. NSCN-K, long established in Somra and surrounding villages, is unlikely to abandon its positions without resistance. If pressed on multiple fronts, it may respond militarily, leading to a drawn-out struggle between Naga factions and Meitei fighters inside Myanmar territory. Such clashes could destabilize multiple villages, disrupt local economies, and potentially drag in additional actors. A third outcome concerns revolutionary groups operating near Tamu. If the alleged cooperation between NSCN-IM, Meitei factions, and Myanmar soldiers intensifies, resistance camps and supply lines could be targeted with greater accuracy and force. Revolutionary groups may be forced to relocate further west into Chin State or deeper into Sagaing's interior. This would increase pressure on Chin communities that are already enduring intense military operations from the junta. A fourth outcome involves the potential transformation of long-standing alliances. The KNAB and Chin resistance could respond by strengthening their ties with other ethnic armed organizations. In a scenario where NSCN-IM and Meitei armed groups are aligned with Myanmar forces, Kuki Burma and Chin groups might find closer alignment with the KIA or other northern alliances necessary for survival. Such shifts could reshape the broader ethnic resistance landscape, not just in Sagaing and Chin, but across northern Myanmar. A fifth possible outcome is humanitarian deterioration. Large-scale displacement from Somra, Tasun, and surrounding villages is probable if clashes continue. Border communities may face shortages of food, medicine, and safe shelter. Children and elderly civilians would be especially vulnerable. Humanitarian access remains difficult in the Naga SAZ, and renewed fighting could isolate entire townships. Each of these outcomes connects directly to the factual structure presented in the original report. A major meeting, internal Naga exclusions, Meitei armed movement, cross-border shifts, and allegations of military cooperation. Even without additional layers of speculation, the existing facts reveal a rapidly evolving situation whose consequences are likely to shape the political and security landscape for months or years to come. Sources referenced: Tahan Post, November 18, 2025, as provided in the user's briefing. Narrative from the PDF Myanmar official pages. Historical contextual knowledge of India. Myanmar border armed dynamics up to mid-2024, used only to frame factual interpretation. Full Zeilengam Media disclaimer. This documentary analysis is prepared for informational and educational purposes by Zeilengam Media. The details analyzed are based on reporting provided by the user and publicly available information. Some events described in the source report remain unverified and may reflect ongoing or developing situations. Viewers should cross-check information with multiple independent sources where possible. Zeilengam Media does not endorse any armed group and strictly condemns all harm to civilians. Any video footage used in this documentary is presented under fair use provisions permitted by YouTube for news reporting, contextual explanation, and educational commentary. The situation on the ground may change rapidly, and this analysis reflects information available at the time of preparation. Viewers rely on this documentary at their own discretion. Thank you for watching this detailed analysis. For more in-depth reporting and documentary-style examinations of unfolding events in the region, remember to subscribe to Zeilengam Media and stay informed as new developments emerge.